passe super, l'artiste, super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De er i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. This episode is really one for the handball nerds, particularly from the English-speaking countries, because we're going to go all emerging nations on you today. We're talking IHF Super Globe, that's on next week, the Panamerican Games, and the first qualification round of the World Handball Championship 2025 in November 2023. Alex Gilesh is here with me, Chris O'Reilly. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing great, Chris. I'm excited for this chat. This is a bonus episode for all of our Patreon listeners because we thought that you have to be a real fan to follow the teams that we're talking about. But it's something that we like doing on this podcast, supporting the English-speaking nations who traditionally have not been at the top of handball, let's say. And today we get to speak about Australian handball, USA handball, and a bit of Great British handball. So exciting stuff going on across all of those nations, and a lot of progress from those countries and teams. So it's a nice point to check in and see what's going on there. We'll be speaking to Dan Reid, who is a goalkeeper for University of Queensland Handball Club, which has qualified for the first time, the men's team for the first time for the IHF Super Globe. They beat Sydney Uni to get to the competition, which starts on the 7th of November. Daniel is also a Patreon member and an active participant in our Discord, so we're really happy to have him on. And with all of that, it was a miracle that we even got to speak to him. Not because of any unavailability, but it's because there's a 14-hour time difference between me in Boston and Daniel in Queensland, but we managed to get it done.
Yeah, that was impressive, I have to say, and really appreciate Dan at 11 o'clock at night after a training session with UQ to have a chat with us. Which of the competitions should we start with?
I think I kind of want to start with the Panam Games.
So we're recording this also while the Panam Games are happening right now, and the USA are facing Uruguay in what is a crunch game. So we might do some live commentary on that, and what we say at the beginning of the podcast might be completely irrelevant by the time it comes out.
Yeah, the Panam Games are it's a funny competition because this is an Olympic style tournament. So, you know, it's a multi-sport tournament based in Santiago in Chile this year. On the handball side, there are 8 teams competing. You've got the big dogs in Brazil and Argentina in there, but there's an interesting kind of second nation battle going on with the likes of Uruguay, Cuba, USA, all competing. And to date, USA have had a pretty good competition. They beat Cuba in, as you put it, Chris, the sweatiest game of all time.
Yes, it was. And I mean the sweatiest game of all time because there were 39 turnovers in the match, which I don't think, you know, Alex, you and I have been in some sweaty games in the past. I don't think we've been in a game where there's been 39 turnovers.
At least not evenly split between two teams.
No,
you know, we may have conceded 39 turnovers against some big teams.
Yeah, it was quite a game, and you could really feel the tension in it. And it's a group, that group in particular, I'm really interested in, with Uruguay, USA, Cuba, and Argentina, because, well, Argentina looked like the clear outstanding team in it, but in their first half against the USA, where USA had an early 3-goal lead, it looked like, oh, maybe the gap has been cut even further between these two nations. Turned out in the end that Argentina were clearly the better side and went on, I think it was like a 12-1 run at the start of the second half to win that game.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with this USA team, it's a team that's actually missing a few players, in particular Alex Chan, who was a real, I'd say, bright spark for the US in the World Championships and over the last couple of years, based in Spain. So he did not make the tournament roster. And I believe, as reported by John Ryan and Team Handball News, it is some passport-related issues in getting a passport renewal that have stopped him competing in that tournament. So it's a little bit that they've also faced a couple of injuries. Paul Skropa, a kind of one of their top German-based players. The biter, the famous biter from the World Championship, wasn't able to make it due to an injury. But they still have a core team with the likes of Abu Fofana, who had the most Abu Fofana game of all time against Cuba, going 5 from 16.
but
or
goal.
6 from 15. 6 from 15.
But he did score the decisive goal to finish it off in the end. So, it's 6 from 15. Wow. That's something. But that really seemed to be the problem for them in the first game against Argentina as well, where they were just, the shooting percentages were all over the place, and from the positions. I mean, it's one thing if you go 40% from the backcourt, but on the line and on the wings, they were like going 1 from 5 and 1 from 3 and stuff like that, which is really, unacceptable at that level.
Definitely. And just watching some this first half against Uruguay, the decisive game. So USA just before halftime are up 15-13. This is the decisive game which would get them into the semi-final, which I think would be quite an impressive feat for them. Cuba, a team that has always been kind of impressive, although this Cuban team, I don't think it had any European-based players. Cuba have had some of their players kind of come into the team and filter in throughout competitions in the past. This time around, it didn't look like they had anyone. And Cuba are such a interesting team. I don't know how Cuban handball has developed in the way it has, and how they're able to get so technically good. They may not be tactically good. Usually they're physically good, but this team didn't seem to be, the peak of physicality. They definitely had some players who didn't look like your top level player, but somehow they're just a technically unbelievable team in a way that, they'll get hit, they'll be falling backwards, but they're able to shoot with a wrist into the top corner, which, is a testament to the Cuban school of handball. But beating them was a big win for the US. And Uruguay, again, probably the fourth South American team over the last couple of years, behind Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. We forgot to mention Chile, of course, who have, they are still a team that competes well at World Championships. Uruguay kind of behind them, even though we might remember Uruguay as one of the most comedic teams in world handball, with some hilarious mistakes or sequences in the past. They're still a good team, and USA currently up, and Fofana having a good game. He just scored there to put them up 17-14. But yeah, what I was going to mention there in live action is that in that game against Cuba, Sam Hodderson, the left winger, had an incredible game. He had 13 goals from 15 attempts, which was really impressive. Really drove USA to that win. He's basically being marked on the wing by Uruguay. The defender is just sticking to Sam on the wing, and then what they've realized is Abu Fofana cannot go between the 1 and 2 defender, even if there's a 3 meter gap there. Fofana will still go into the middle. He'll do a fake and he'll try to shoot over.
It's the classic, it's like the left back fallacy. It's just like everything in his body is telling him to go into the middle and shoot. It's like, it's an optical illusion. There is no space on the left. I don't know who's out there. This is some kind of winger maybe, but it's nothing I'm interested in. If you listen to our last morning club, this is something that Alex is going to become more familiar with as he reinvents himself as a left back.
That's it.
in the years to come.
What's a winger?
What's a winger? That's it. What's interesting, you mentioned that Alex Shan not being in the squad for USA, and besides that, though, like we're really seeing this squad become set in stone for Robert Hedin. He's got a group of players now that he really trusts in. That he's saying, okay, we're gonna take this team with us for the next 5 years, basically, until the Olympics. Some of them, like Gary Hines, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to be playing in the Olympics in 5 years' time at the age of, I don't know, will he be 45 or so then? But besides that, there is like the age profile of the team does fit, and they're looking more and more like a proper team, you have to say. And we were so impressed with them back in January at the World Championship with those tight victories that they managed, and it looks like that in these games as well against Cuba and Uruguay, now they're leading by 4 at halftime, that they have what it takes to be the best of the rest in Pan America, and hopefully for them to try and break into that top 2 against Argentina and Brazil. We know that there's only one qualification spot from this tournament into the Olympics next year. On the women's side, which women's tournament happened just before, and it was Brazil who took that ticket, beating Argentina in the final. But you feel like maybe Chile could have a chance, Chile against Argentina in a semi-final as well on home court in a couple of days' time?
I think so. I haven't been able to watch any of the Chile games, but they've been quite, they've done what they needed to do. They beat Dominican Republic and Mexico, and not the big nations. We'll see what they do later today, actually, against Brazil. That result will be out by the time this podcast is out. But I think Brazil are the heavy favourites here. It's... But again, Brazil-Argentina game is always a fun one. So maybe I'll tune in for that one in the final, as I would expect.
Well, that's what's interesting about the semi-final. If Chile-Argentina is almost like a final in itself, because second place in the tournament gets into the Olympic qualifiers, and that I think is the main thing that both of those teams will be as like a minimum requirement to get into that. If Brazil are going to go and take that top spot, as we expect. But yeah, you never know. Are USA in the semi-final against Brazil? I'd be looking forward to seeing that. They played each other in the pre-World Championship tournament in Norway, if you remember, back in January. And that wasn't exactly a walkover. Brazil won the game, but they didn't hammer USA. They looked pretty poor, in fact, in that one. So maybe the clash of styles suiting the US there. Anything else you want to say on the Panam Games before we move on?
Yeah, just the story of the Argentina bus getting robbed on the side of a highway in Santiago. A little bit of a funny one, posted by Fede Pizarro. Their bags, just the medical bag got stolen, so hopefully they don't have too many injuries.
The Argentines are getting a rough time of it over in Chile. The bus being stolen. Elka Karsten on the women's team getting ridiculous abuse from the Brazilian fans in the final when she got her red card, with Brazil 20 goals to 10 up, basically jeering her as she made her way off to the seats where the red carded players go. Yeah, they seem to be the downtrodden team at this Panamerican Games.
It is good to see that the US continues to progress, and as you mentioned, this team really looks like they know what they're doing. They've been together for a while, and that's kind of been a benefit for them in these tight games. They're up at halftime against Uruguay, 19-15. So looking really good for them. Let's see at the end of the podcast if we have further updates. Maybe
yes.
not. Maybe not.
Just one thing, as I see the players who haven't been playing warm up on the screen, is we have in the US team also a future contender for the random rocket at every championship they're going to be in. Do you know who I'm talking about?
We're talking, is it Armatovic or
exactly, Amar Amatovic, who is the definition of a random rocket, and he scores some beautiful goals, but he's a 1 out of 7 kind of guy. Sometimes he's very young, and his time will come. But what I love about him is that he just has absolutely no fear. He could miss 4 shots in a row, but he'll still take on that sidearm shot and
then
try
he'll
and
miss
put it through the
3 more.
keeper's leg.
But he'll score that 8th one.
He'll score the 8th one. Nobody stops Amar 8 times in a row. All right, time for our interview with Dan Reid from University of Queensland, as he speaks to us right after their last training session before heading over to Saudi Arabia for next week's IHF Super Globe. It's a lovely chance to talk about him and the men's team making their debut at this stage. Dan Reid from University of Queensland Handball Club, about to make their debut at the IHF Super Globe, joins us. Dan, how you doing?
Thanks, guys, for having me. I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
It's really nice to have you on, not just because we like to take any opportunity we can when it comes to Super Globe time to talk to guys from the Australian or North American side of things, but also because you are one of our subscribers on Patreon. So it's a double bonus for us, and that makes Alex particularly happy.
Absolutely. And I will say that, thank you for subscribing to Patreon, but I don't guarantee every person who subscribes to Patreon will get their own podcast interview. But happy to have you on, Daniel.
Thank you. I promise that wasn't the intention. I just needed something to listen to at work, and I found you guys. I was like, oh, this is great.
That's great. That's something we can sell the Patreon to. Something to listen to while you're at work. But yeah, it helps to get an interview when you're about to play in the Super Globe. And it's a really nice story to have a new team from Australia qualify. But before we get into all that, Dan, for our listeners, and for when you're listening to yourself then, when it comes out, tell us a little bit about your handball journey. Tell us about yourself, what position you play in, and how you found the sport.
So I found the sport in probably the most Australian way possible. There was a schools comp being run at the time, and I had a friend that was playing at one of the junior clubs, and he was like, hey, came to the boys at school and was like, there's this comp, who wants to play? And so we ended up all joining for that. We got our team together. We found a coach from apparently one of the teachers had played it at some stage, so that's how we got involved. And in typical goalkeeper fashion, it was a thing of anyone want a goalkeeper? No one put their hand up. Well, I guess I'll do it. So that's how I ended up being a goalkeeper. So that's my position. But from there, we ended up playing in the tournament and we won. And there was a guy there that played on the national team at the time, and he was like, "Hey, come play this amazing sport where you throw a ball into the goal. There's tons of opportunities in it." And yeah, that's really how I started. I mean, great story. And then from there, I pretty much decided, hey, I want to take this further. So started training as much as I could, reached out, found UQ Handball Club, and they really helped me along the way and took me for the last 4 years, just pushed me to be the best I could, really. That's really how I got into it.
So it's just been 4 years of playing handball for you?
I think, 2019. So maybe 4.5, actually. I think the tournament was end of 2018. So 4.5 years, we'll say. That's probably more accurate representation.
That's nice. 4 years of playing handball, and then you get a chance to play against Magdeburg in a couple of weeks. That's pretty nice for some. But what about the club, University of Queensland? This is probably a team that's not familiar for most people. We always know as Sydney Uni being the team that comes out of Australia and plays in the IHF Super Globe. This year, it was Queensland that came through the Australian competition. And I do remember that I think Queensland has pushed Sydney Uni quite a bit over the last couple of years. So how has the club progressed over time you've been with it?
So I think the journey to get here started before I was here. I was speaking to some of the club committee, and they really said that the push was from about 2015, that they really wanted to set the goal. I mean, Sydney Uni was undefeatable at since 2012, I think. So they really started pushing for that in 2015, and from there they've just been trying as hard as possible to do it. I mean, we were able to pick up a really good coach from Colombia, Juan Diaz, and he's been able to take us to new heights, I would say, throughout the time that he's been with us. But especially in the last few years, we've been so close. I mean, 2019, we went to overtime, and it was a 1 point in it at the end. And I think that really broke a lot of the players, like obviously being that close, and no one had really been that close to Sydney Uni before. Was a bit brutal, but I think it was a very good learning experience for the team as a whole. And then with COVID happening, we lost a few opportunities to play them leading up to it, obviously. And in 2021, when the tournament was run, unfortunately in Australia, COVID lockdown hit like the week of. So while we ended up winning 2021 club champs, obviously Sydney Uni couldn't be there. And then obviously we couldn't leave the country, and they didn't play, so it wasn't really a qualifier. So Sydney Uni was able to go, and they obviously smashed in 2021 and got a really good result in COVID. So that was good for them. And then 2022, brutal year, very brutal year, where we got to the final.
And that's all of this bonus podcast we're going to give you. If you're not a subscriber on Patreon, you can listen to the rest of that great chat with Dan Reid, plus our preview of the Super Club, plus our look forward to a historic occasion for the British men's team, all on our Patreon. And you can subscribe for just 1 month and try it out for as little as you like. We have options there for everyone depending on your budget. So come try it out with us. Experience what our Patreon community is all about. And if that's not for you this week, then that's okay. We'll be back next week with another full podcast. Thank you for listening, and talk to you again soon. Goodbye.